Hello and welcome to Afternoon Tea with Karen. Today's subject is on the board.
So I get a lot of questions about who's behind these protests, who's funding the protesters, is there funding, are some of the protesters being paid? And the answer to that is yes, they are being paid. There's a lot of levels of obfuscation though, and for an investigative reporter, it's a real workout because a lot of groups like George Soros' Open Society Foundations and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund are giving donations through something called a fiscal sponsor, which is a nonprofit organization that then disperses funds to other groups. And this is how some of the groups like Students for Justice in Palestine and other groups are getting money. The big funders like the Soros Foundations and the Rockefeller Brothers Foundations are sending money through various different levels of nonprofits, so that when you go back to try to find who is the original donor, you have to do a lot of work. I noticed as well that some of the protesters that have been active in student protests have been funded through fellowships to another group that, while it features the photos and the first names of the protesters on their website, they don't give last names. And it was interesting too for me that when I looked up the students themselves, many of them are no longer students at the respective universities where they're doing the protests, and they don't have their fellowships through which they got money to be protesters, essentially. They don't have that on their LinkedIn pages. So there's a level of obfuscation that's going on. There's a level of hiding, so that you don't know who the original donors are. One example is the Open Society Foundation has sent maybe $20 million to a group called the Tides Foundation, which is known as a fiscal sponsor that then will disperse funds to different groups, in this case, to different radical anti-Israel groups. So the point being is that the original donor can say, well, I gave to the Tides Foundation on a tax receipt, if they did want to hide it.
Welcome back. Anti-Israel protests erupting on college campuses across the country. Columbia University students here in New York City have filed a federal civil rights complaint against the university. They claim that the school is discriminating against Palestinian students and protesters, creating a hostile environment for them. When the cops came to arrest demonstrators, the U.S. Department of Education still investigating reports of anti-Semitism on campus. Joining me now is former New York City Police Department Inspector, Fox News contributor, and the OpsDesk.org founder, lawyer Paul Morrow. Paul, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. How do you assess what's going on, taking place on all these universities? And now the Palestinians are saying that they're getting discriminated on.
Yeah, good luck with that. So this thing is actually going to get worse, and we should all be prepared for it. There were measures that could have been taken up front that might have tamped it down. I think that the trespass violation charges, which is really a glorified parking summons, was a mistake. I think it's likely all that the president of Columbia would accede to, but all it did was empower these folks, got them right back out there. Now we're going to be entering the summer protest season. You have all of this coordination going on from Democrat funding organizations and coordinating committees. It's all that kind of dark money that goes to not only candidates, but that we've seen in Occupy Wall Street and the quote-unquote Summer of Love in 2020. And so what do we have coming up? We have May Day coming up, which is a big day for them. But all of this could lead all the way to the DNC in Chicago, equidistant from New York, Minneapolis, even L.A. So Chicago is going to be it's almost going to look like 1968. This is a problem for the Dems. It's going to continue, but this lawsuit has no merit.
Well, there's a story this morning in the New York Post. It says George Soros is paying student radicals who are fueling nationwide explosion of Israel-hating protests. And in the piece, the Post writes this: all of these protests are being organized by branches of the Soros-funded Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP. And at some, students have clashed with police. We've been trying to figure out who's behind all of this because, Paul, obviously it's coordinated. They all have the same colored tents, the same colored outfits. Somebody's funding all of this. One of my guests yesterday said, don't be surprised if you learn more that it's the Communist China Party, the Communist Party of China behind it as well. But this Post story here is is talking about this SJP parent organization. It's been funded by a network of nonprofits, ultimately funded by, among others, George Soros, the billionaire left-wing investor.
Yeah, we've seen this in the past. They use all of these dark money cutouts. The money is funded through subsidiaries so that it's difficult to follow. And that's why last Monday you saw when this all kicked off, these protests occurred simultaneously in cities across the country. This is before they occupied Colombia. But we had all these protests. I was out there, so I was up close on them. These protests look very, very much like Occupy. It's not just students. I've seen the ages of some of the arrestees. They're in their mid-20s. They're well past college age.
Wow.
And so you see that going on at the same time all over the country. They all have the same tents, the same placards.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's coordination. Somebody's pulling the strings.
Unbelievable.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
We need you! Are there more pushes?
They're around.
We need to pressure our institutions to divest from this genocide, our governments to cancel all weapons contracts with the Zionist state, and to end all aid to Israel.
Down with occupation! Down, down with occupation! Up, up with liberation! Up, up with liberation!
Down, down with occupation! Down, down with occupation!
We are thousands, we are millions! We are all Palestinians! Not another nickel, not another dime! No more money for Israel's crimes! No more money for Israel's crimes!
Hi, we're students at the University of Melbourne. We're here at the encampment to show our solidarity with Gaza.
Now we're here at Melbourne Uni camping out in solidarity with the Palestinian people and in protest of Melbourne Uni's ties to apartheid Israel.
My name is Emily. I'm an NTU member at the University of Melbourne.
The university has been repeatedly refusing to listen to us. They haven't been transparent about their ethnic research policies. They have not been transparent about whether they will be divesting from all of these represented sections on campus.
I'm a Trade Unions for Palestine member. I'm also an early education worker, member of United Workers Union.
We think it's particularly important to do support. These institutions have multi-million-dollar contracts with weapons corporations. In a sense, staining students' degrees with blood.
I think it's important that students, staff, and union members come down to support the encampment, camp out with us overnight if you can. I think union members have a huge stake in what's happening in Gaza, especially union members at the university.
They have not been having any conversation with us recently, and so this is a show, of course, that the community and students are not going to be treated like this anymore. We're not going to be silenced anymore. We're not going to be ignored anymore.
We need to be workers and students hand in hand to boycott, divest and sanction Israel and break the connection that UniMel has to support and end the genocide in Palestine.
Our university is complicit in the ongoing genocide that's happening in Palestine, and students across the world, from New York, Columbia Uni to Australia, Sydney University and now Melbourne University, are standing up and fighting back in solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Hi, I'm Tim Reid, Greens MP for Brunswick, and I'm really pleased to be here on day one of the Uni Melbourne Palestine encampment at the south corner of Melbourne University.
We know that all universities in Gaza have been destroyed in what has now starting to be called a scholasticide.
Appallingly, the University of Melbourne has financial relationships and educational relationships with some of the companies involved in this bloodshed.
Like Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, Rosebank, Boeing, just to name a few. There's a lot more, but that's why we're here.
Completely inappropriate for an educational institution to be connected with weapons manufacturing.
Personally, as a student, I would rather see, institutions that I study with put their efforts towards, health, put their efforts towards designing sustainable ecological infrastructure and, social institutions, not weapons.
It's also important that it's begun on Anzac Day. I'm really proud of the students for doing this, because Anzac Day, if you talk to anyone in Australia, is a time for reflection on the futility and the cost and the horror of war. And that's exactly what's happening in Gaza right now.
Camping out demands that University of Melbourne cuts all its contracts so that it is not complicit in the genocide of Palestinians.
I also think as union members we value collective action, we value solidarity, and we value, we have principles of justice.
And we're going to stay here as long as it takes to get the university to come down and divest and have a conversation with us.
So come down to camp. We are seeing student movements on fire everywhere around the world. Started on Turtle Island in the US. It's very contagious, and here in Melbourne, in Naarm, we are starting it.
And that's about that. Seeing we've got a bit of time, however, I downloaded the Sex Discrimination Act. So I can go through this religious educational institutions anti-discrimination laws consultation paper again in regards to the proposals. Oh, how exciting and fun. Anyway, that'll do. See you later. Bye.